The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
Ago that we would be preaching from the same 6 verses, Mark chapter 3, 1 through 6. And so here we go again. And I'm reading from the King James Version. And he entered again into the synagogue, and there was a man there which had a withered hand. And they watched him whether he would heal him on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him. And he said unto the man which had the withered hand, stand forth. And he said unto them, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath day, or to do evil, to save life, or to kill? But they held their peace. And when he had looked round about on them with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, he said unto the man, stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored whole as the other. And the Pharisees went forth and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. They took counsel with the Herodians, how they might destroy him. Thus the end of the reading of the word. And let me ask those of you who are watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, if you hadn't already, please share this service. Invite your friends and family to tune in for this word and this worship. And the subject of the sermon today, let's stop this from happening at church. Let's stop this Vertus from happening at church. And I'm calling Vertus' name because I see her on the chat. Let's stop this Don Travius, this foolishness from happening at church. Amen. Again, past 2 weeks, we've been preaching from this same passage. In the first sermon, we talked about the idea that it happened at church. That because this man who had the withered hand was in worship on the Sabbath at the synagogue, and Jesus was there, he was able to get his healing. And I suggested to you, and you seemingly agreed, that it is beneficial for us to show up in corporate worship. God can bless anywhere. But there are moments in time when things happen in church that if you have forsaken the assembling of yourselves together, you will miss that moment. And I tried to tell you that these miracles still happen. I don't believe miracles stopped when Jesus went back to be with the Father. I don't think that it's just a Bible day kind of thing. But God is still in the miracle business. And then last week, we talked about the idea that when Jesus asked a man to stretch forth his hand, this man who had a withered hand, Jesus asked him to do something he had never done. He couldn't stretch it. But Jesus asked him to stretch it, and he was healed. And I told you, when God asks you to do something you've never done, it's because he wants to transform you into somebody, to someone you've never been, and do something you've never done. And we got to have enough faith. But in this same passage, with all that positivity, there's a negative side. And it's the negative side I want to talk about. And I almost hesitated because I said we're going to have a whole lot of guests from Illinois, and I don't want them to come all the way down here and hear about, trouble in the church. But then the Lord said, they're not coming down here to hear that for the first time, because there's trouble in the church where they come from. That this trouble we're talking about is universal. It's universal. And so let's get in it so I don't keep you all day. And so remember, as I refresh your memory now, Jesus is in the synagogue, and there's a man who has a withered hand. And there are a group of people there called Pharisees. And remember now, these are the religious people, the leaders who are in charge of the synagogue, the worship, and along with the scribes, they oversee the reading, the recording, the interpretation of the law, and all of the synagogue rules. And so instead of engaging in authentic worship, they're watching Jesus to see if he's going to do something wrong so they can trap him. And by wrong, I mean something that violates their rules. And they see something that gives them the belief that Jesus is getting ready to do wrong. There's a man in the congregation whose hand is withered. They've not thought about helping him, and they can't help him. And the man who can help him is in their midst. And they are watching him because they know he has the capacity to help, and they want to see if he will help him. Now, in my mind, if you got any religion, if you saved at all, you ought to be happy that Jesus is in the house, and the man with the withered hand is in the house, and now Jesus is getting ready to help him. That's me, and I hope that's you. But these Pharisees, they were hoping that he would help him so they could accuse him of breaking the law. And in accusing him, they wanted to tarnish his name, his reputation. See, he's not religious. He's not the Messiah. He's not even who he say he is, because if he was truly spiritual, religious Messiah, he would never work on the Sabbath day. But Jesus said, let me go ahead and straighten these fellas out. So they had the man to stand in front of them, and there's this question posed. Is it lawful on the Sabbath day to do good or evil? And we talked about that last week. And in Matthew's gospel, it records that he asked the question, what if one of you had an animal that fell in the ditch on the Sabbath? Wouldn't you get him out? Isn't this man's life more important than an animal in a ditch? And yet you don't want me to heal him? And then the Bible says the fellas didn't say a word, and Jesus got angry. He was upset. And then he just said to the man, stretch forth your hand, and the man was healed. And true to their nature, because as the Bible says, because of the hardness of their heart, they got mad. Look at verse 7, because I want you to see what their anger, their madness resulted in. Go back to verse 6, not 7, 6, I'm sorry. And the Pharisees went forth after Jesus performed the miracle. And that word straightway mean immediately. They didn't waste any time. And they took counsel with another group called the Herodians against him. Took counsel. Translation, they started plotting. And what was the plot? How they might destroy him. They started plotting with the Herodians how they might destroy him. And I need you to hear me now, because I'm getting ready to talk to you in a minute so you can see yourself in a text. I want to make sure you hear me. Did Jesus slap somebody in the service? Did he shoot somebody? Did he do something immoral? Did he come to church drunk? Did he do something good? And the result of his goodness is these religionists plotting to destroy him. And when you read NIV and other translations, so you know how deep this plot is, they are plotting to kill him. come close to me when I said the subject is let's stop this from happening in church. Here's what I want to tell you. Let's stop this plotting that's going on in church. And it's not just Mount Zion, but it's every church, because we still got Pharisees and we got Herodians, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute. But we still have folk who plot against people, against the church of Jesus Christ, to destroy it, not because of evil, but because of good. I know you don't see yourself yet. You see yourself as Jesus wanting to be helpful. You see yourself as the man with the withered hand who needed help. But there are some Pharisees in here. And you got a Pharisee record. You've been part of plots in the church to destroy an individual, to destroy a ministry, to destroy a leader, to destroy even the local congregation itself. And you don't see yourself as being guilty because, like these religionists in the text, you thought you were doing it in the name of God for God. You thought God was on your side, and he wasn't. You got the brakes on me. You know you've been guilty of gossiping, trying to destroy somebody's character. You know, just like this wonderful choir, and he or she is not up there today, but there is one person that if they were up there singing today, you'd hunt your neighbor. I just can't listen to him. I just can't listen to her. I don't even see why you clapping. Well, what's wrong with you? Why you hating on it? I don't like them. You don't know who they used to be. You don't know about their past. We need to go see Pastor Simmons so he can take them down. Ain't no need of going to see him because he ain't going to entertain that foolishness. Well, I tell you what, let's get us a plan to destroy that person's character, that person's reputation in the church. And that's lightweight stuff there. Can I just be straight real? Let me just do this, and then I'm going to take the covers off. Go ahead and be sure enough real so you don't have any kind of confusion about what we're talking about today. So it says that these Pharisees, and they plot with the Herodians. The Herodians and the Pharisees don't even get along. The Pharisees is this religious sect whose hope is in the Messiah coming in the Bible and the Old Testament and all that. And these Herodians are Jews who have put their faith in the Herods, the kings who've been assigned to rule over them by Rome. They believe that their deliverance is going to come through the political arena. And so they've connected themselves politically with Herod, and thus they are called Herodians. And so these Pharisees, the religionists, they understand that they can't destroy Jesus by themselves. And so they are willing now to make an alliance with people they don't even like. Because in order to kill him, they got to have Roman sanction, and they feel like the Herodians can help them with that. And so they become partners. And I want to tell you that before I take the cover off, because it still happened. People who don't even like each other, groups that don't even talk to each other, will align themselves with groups that come after you. And those of us who say we got so much religion and we just love the Lord and all this foolishness, we will align ourselves even with non-religious saved folk like Herodians, because they can help us do what we do. Now let me take the cover off. I'm a church baby. I've been in church all of my life. And I spent some time in the streets. And I have not seen the kind of fighting and undercutting in the streets that I've seen in the church. Yeah. Gentleman sitting over there can attest to this. I was supposed to preach at a church, and then he called me and said, Pastor, and he named the pastor where I was supposed to go, is dead. I said, what happened? He said there were some deacons who did not appreciate his leadership. And the deacons told him, don't come back Sunday. And you know, deacons don't have the authority to tell people that because they don't run anybody's church. I want to make that plain. But without the congregation's permission, they told him not to come back. And being a faithful man of God, he went back. And the deacon said, didn't I tell you not to come back? And he got out the car and got ready to step up on the church step, and he shot him dead. And he had other men at the church who conspired in that. You say, ooh, that's bad. That ain't no isolated incident. They wanted to destroy him because they didn't like the way he was leading the church. How many of you know the history of Mount Zion, right? And I'm thankful to say, Reverend Grant was here 49 and I've been here 31, and it hadn't happened since then. But prior to that, 9 churches came out of Mount Zion. And they were not 9 churches planted by Mount Zion, as in, hey, there's a need for a church over there, let's go start one. But these were 9 churches who came out of Mount Zion because there was fighting in Mount Zion and a group left. And I was blessed when I got here to talk to a family. The husband left and went with one of the other churches, and the wife stayed. And they shared with me that night. And he said, Pastor Simmons, I remember that night like it was yesterday. The police was there. And there was fighting, and there was this and that. And if it hadn't been for the police, something bad would have happened. And Mount Zion is not the only church that's like that. But there's fighting and there's bickering. And least I tarried with you too long. In ministries, in pulpits, in Sunday school classes, all around us, we got people conspiring with folk to stop the work of the church. And you try to stop it by coming after people. And I want to say to you that the devil is using you. No matter how good you think you are, the devil is using you. Pastor Simmons, help us then. How do we stop that? And I decided I stopped there. I'm not going to take all the cover off. But you understand there's still some plotting and some mess going on. And so here it is. Where did these men go wrong? Because I don't want to go wrong. You don't want to go wrong. So let's learn from there. Here's where they went wrong. Number one, they were against the person of Jesus because he did not fit into the box that they thought he should have been in. They had this box, this religious box that they said Jesus ought to fit in. He ought to come and be with us and not all these people on the fringes. He ought to follow our rules. He ought to follow our customs and our tradition. He need to wash his hands like we do. He need to stay away from the same folk we stay away from. He don't need to eat with sinners. He need to observe our rules when he come to worship. He didn't fit into that box, and so they rejected him. And you and I don't want to be guilty of rejecting Jesus because he don't fit in our box. Pastor Simmons, I thought you were talking about the church. I am. This is his church. And when it comes to his church and doing it his way, when you reject him and what he has established in his church, it's the same as rejecting him, not just what you are fighting. And you and I need to come to the conclusion that I'm okay if Jesus does not fit in my box. If he has new wine, I don't want to be old wineskins. I want to be new wineskin so that he can put the new wine in me. So they rejected the person of Christ and then the will of God. It was God's will that that man be made whole. But because it was not their will that it be done on that day, they said no. And again, to stop this plotting, I've got to get past wanting my will to be done, and you got to get past yours. If you want something at church, in your ministry, in your meeting, and you don't get what you want, we don't need you after the meeting holding another meeting to plot with your friends how you gonna overthrow the decision that was just made. And anybody who's been in a meeting with me at this church, you know I have one rule. In the meeting, you need to say what you're gonna say. Because after the meeting, I don't want you behind texting me. I don't want you behind calling me, talking about we should have, what you think. I don't think of. If you didn't say it in that meeting with everybody, I am not conspiring evil with you. Don't call me. Don't text me. I'm going to block you. You ain't going to never be able to call or text me again. Because I don't play that. And you need to be strong. And when folk try to pull you in, oh, I don't think that was right. Oh, I just don't think that was right. I think we need to do something. What you need to do is submit to the will of God. Yeah. All right. You ready? Pat yourself and say, I'm important. All right. But not that important. So here it is. Here it is. You know what they couldn't get? It wasn't about them. It wasn't about them. And if we who are in the church could just come to that place, I'm just submitting to the person of God, of Christ, his will for my life. And it's easier for me to do that when I know it's not about me. Because all of us in here, let's acknowledge, we got a little ego. We got some preferences. But we got to accept and understand that when it comes to church, when it comes to the Lord, it's bigger than us. It's not about me. I had a member, who said one time, and it's a long time ago, don't y'all be looking, trying to figure out who it was. I thought that you were better than that. I said, what you mean? I thought you were a biblical teacher. I said, what you mean? How could you let the choir do such a thing? I said, do what? What? I hadn't heard what they do. The women who sing wear earrings. I said, come again? Yes. I told them that it was just sinful for us to be up here with earrings on, and we shouldn't wear earrings when we sing. And they didn't agree with me, so I'm leaving the choir. And if you don't change it, I'm leaving the church. This is what I wanted to say. You want me to write you a letter, baby? Tell me where you're going. But I tried to reason. Why you? But there was no reasoning. That's your preference, earrings. But that ain't God's will. That you sing with no earrings on. Now, maybe I could have seen it if it was something, But I'm still, 25 years later trying to wrap my mind around those earrings. And while you laughing, you got some trivia stuff too. So let me ask you, because I'm getting ready to make me a transition. And before I make my transition, I just need to know, can we agree that we won't be the guilty parties when it comes to plotting and conniving in church? And you might say you looking out for the interests of church. Can you agree that you won't do that? Getting ready to hurt you. So in your next ministry meeting, when you ask a question and they don't give you the satisfactory answer, you going to be all right with that? When you ask to see a report and they don't have a report, you going to be all right with that? When they ask you, when you ask them, well, what y'all spent that on? And they can't tell you at that moment, you going to be all right with that? When they tell you we starting a new Sunday school class, you going to be all right with that? I caught so much hell a few weeks ago because we started Sunday school class. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I had shot somebody. You gonna be all right because I just said that? Keep it 100, all right. You gonna be all right? I got some help for you now as I make this transition. For those of you that are in the plotting business, you're really wasting your time because it's not going to work. And those of you that find yourself being plotted against, don't lose any sleep over it. Don't start responding on social media to all of the foolishness. Don't be running around church trying to get somebody. Don't let us have to hold you down because you want to fight. Don't stop speaking to folk. Let them do what they do because they're making a mistake. These Pharisees had been following Jesus, but they didn't pay close enough attention. See, he told them that he was going to build his church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. That means whatever you bring at it, whatever you plot against the church, it's not going to work. And in fact, God got a sense of humor in that he takes what you mean for evil and he turn it around for good. Yeah. What they didn't know was that God was going to use their plotting to help Jesus fulfill his mission.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.